and you're with us online today, thanks to the Miami Book Fair, to talk about The Orchard, your debut novel that received quite critical acclaim. What's the story about?
First of all, thanks for having me. It's a thrill to be here. My novel, The Orchard, is a coming-of-age story that reimagines a myth in the Talmud. There's a myth that's a little bit eerie, a little bit haunting, that features four rabbis who enter into what's called an orchard and come face to face with God. Each of these rabbis experience a different fate and leave irreversibly changed. And so my novel transposes that myth into modern times. It explores the story of an 18-year-old high school senior named Ari Eden, who finds himself abruptly uprooted from a very right-wing, ultra-Orthodox community in Brooklyn. And he lands in a more secularized, fast-paced community in Miami, and finds himself surrounded by these very ambitious, very charismatic, and a little bit defiant friends who are conducting increasingly unconventional and dangerous moral experiments. So my novel takes that foundational myth from the Talmud. It reimagines it in very contemporary terms. So it's a book of ideas. It thinks a lot about pressing questions faced by anyone involved with religion or a search for meaning in today's world, which I think a lot of us are, especially during COVID, as people are grappling with how to fill their lives and how things have changed. And it's also a fast-moving book. So it's all those things.
Probably also underlying the clash between cultural and faith and communities. So all different, but when you move to such a place or you're taken from your community to somewhere unknown, it's quite, it can be very hard to adapt sometimes, I guess.
Absolutely. I think it's a jarring transition. But it also opens up opportunities where people, I think when they move to a new place, you bring with you what you've had before, and you bring with you visions of what you want to become. And you're faced with a very interesting opportunity that can go in many different directions, where you can either reinvent yourself or you can reaffirm what you always have hoped you were. So this is an opportunity in this story where someone lands in a very different environment, exposed to very different sorts of opportunities, and is faced with that choice. How do you grapple with conflicting identities? How do you grapple with the realization of who you are versus who you want to become? And how do you feel when you end up there and you look back and think, did I make the right choices, and how do I evolve?
How did you work writing your book? Did you know the end from the very beginning, or did you have to follow your characters to know where they were going?
It was a mix of both. So I started writing this book when I was, I guess, 17 or 18 years old, when I was a senior in high school. And so I had this idea in my head. I had that spark. The spark has stayed alive since then. I knew ultimately where the book would end up. So I started outlining, and I started thinking about the characters a lot. I wrote a few pages. And the interesting thing was, because of my age at the time, in some ways, I have basically grown up with this book. I came of age with a coming of age book. I wrote a lot of it while I was in college. I finished it by the time I finished college. And so the characters have inhabited little pieces of real estate in my head and have grown up with me as I've grown up with them. So it was very, but I do outline a lot when I start. So it's a process of outlining and having solid ground upon which to walk, and then learning about your characters as they come to life, as you come to life in your own world. Yeah.
And for those characters, what inspired you? Or were you inspired by the people around you, by your family, friends?
Right. Well, I should note that it's definitely a fictional book. It's not based off off any of my friends or family. I grew up in a community that doesn't really resemble, as will become apparent when people read the book. It's a very different geographically and culturally. But I did grow up in studying in a dual curriculum. I grew up in an education which I loved and valued, that gave me an opportunity to be steeped in tradition and learn about religious texts, but also have a rigorous secular education. And so in that way, I think that was pivotal in informing how I thought about the world that I'm writing about. And I grew up. I am in a modern Orthodox Jew. I grew up in that community. And when I went off to college and I was still writing this book, I was exposed to another beautiful world that was rich with secular studies and a universe of philosophy and literature. So what I loved doing as part of this book was combining my academic interests and my religious background and just my general views of the world into one book that can kind of struggle with all these ideas and find a way for them to all fit together instead of conflicting ultimately.
And now that the book is in the world, what's your look on your book now in perspective?
It's a very humbling and exciting time right now. I'm currently in my first semester of law school, so I'm in the middle of school right now, and I have the book coming out very soon, right as my finals start. So that itself is a fun experience, and it's all the more meaningful because I think when you write a book, this is my first book. It's something I started when I was a teenager, and you write it with a lot of hopes and a lot of meaning in it in your personal life, but ultimately it's a private endeavor. You're laboring at it by yourself for a long time, over many years. So to now see the book come out and be appreciated and have some kind of effect on people, operating on the levels I was hoping for, engaging conversations that I think are important. It's been a wonderful experience. I think books are made to be read and made to be experienced. So it's a lovely experience to see people reading it now. Yeah.
So is it the beginning of a writing career for you?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I'm in the unique position where I love law school. I very much intend to be a practitioner of law and think about the law. But I also don't want to stop my writing career. So I have other writing projects in the works. I'm hoping to combine both of them. Parts of the things that I love about law are about thinking about how we govern the world in a humanistic way. And I think being a writer of fiction and a writer in general helps. I think it enriches the way you can think about the law. And I think the reverse is true as well. I think when I'm writing fiction or I'm writing pieces outside of my law school classes, you can think about the world in a very analytical way with the purpose of how does this enhance the world? How am I bettering society?
Well, David, we can only wish you the very best. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been very nice speaking with you.
It was wonderful to have me. Thank you.
And thanks to the Miami Book Fair who allowed this interview. You can visit them online at miamibookfair.com, and you can access to all their free programming. This is José from Escala TV. Goodbye.